What if I told you that the secret to building a world-changing business isn't about competing with others? It's about completely dominating your own market? In this video, we're diving deep into 0 to 1 by Thiel, a book that challenges everything you thought you knew about success. Are you ready to unlock the hidden truths about monopolies, innovation, and why competition is actually your biggest enemy? Stick with me until the end because the strategies we're about to explore could completely transform your approach to business and set you on the path to creating something truly unique. Make sure you watch this video all the way to the end because you won't want to miss a single game-changing idea. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and activate the notification bell so you never miss out on more powerful insights. You're watching Book Summary, and this is just the beginning. Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Future of Progress and Monopoly. The future of progress is not about merely repeating what has already been done. This is the foundation of 0 to 1 by Thiel. True progress comes from creating entirely new things, a concept he calls vertical progress or 0 to 1, rather than simply copying existing models, which he refers to as horizontal progress or 1 to n. The most valuable businesses are not those that engage in relentless competition, but rather those that establish monopolies, enabling them to innovate without being constrained by external pressures. Progress takes two fundamental forms. Horizontal progress involves copying things that already exist, replicating successful models and expanding them into new territories. Thiel uses China's adoption of 19th-century railroads and 20th-century air conditioning as examples of this. On the other hand, vertical progress entails innovation, doing something that has never been done before. Moving from a typewriter to a word processor is a perfect example. While both forms of progress have a role in development, it is vertical progress, the creation of something fundamentally new that drives the world forward. The act of creation is singular. When something truly new is introduced, it changes the landscape forever. This 0 to 1 mentality is the driving force behind genuine progress. Thiel argues that American companies will fail if they do not invest in innovation, as mere competition in existing markets will not lead to long-term success. Contrary to popular belief, competition is not necessarily a good thing. While most people view competition as an essential driver of progress, Thiel presents a contrarian perspective. He suggests that excessive competition can be destructive, leading companies into a survival struggle rather than fostering genuine innovation. The notion that businesses must compete to succeed is flawed because, in a highly competitive market, profits are continuously eroded. In such an environment, companies focus on short-term survival rather than long-term vision. Thiel asserts that in a perfectly competitive market, no company can make an economic profit in the long run, as constant competition drives prices down and eliminates differentiation. Monopolies, rather than being harmful, are actually beneficial in many cases. A good monopoly is a company so uniquely effective at what it does that no other firm can offer a close substitute. By dominating their markets, monopolies can set their own prices to maximize profits, but more importantly, they can also afford to think beyond mere financial survival. Creative monopolies bring entirely new abundance to society, advancing technology and improving life in ways that competitive markets cannot. Thiel's statement, "The next Bill Gates will not build an operating system, the next Larry Page or Sergey Brin won't make a search engine, and the next Mark Zuckerberg won't create a social network," encapsulates this philosophy. True innovation does not come from copying the past, but from forging a new path. Those who simply imitate the great innovators of the past are not actually learning from them. The real lesson is to create something new and original. A clear distinction between horizontal and vertical progress is illustrated by the example. If you take one typewriter and build 100, you have made horizontal progress. If you have a typewriter and build a word processor, you have made vertical progress. Producing more of the same is incremental improvement, while creating something fundamentally different represents a leap forward. The former is 1 to n, while the latter is 0 to 1. Thiel argues that this type of progress is crucial for long-term success. Google is a prime example of a company that went from 0 to 1. Since the early 2000s, Google has not truly competed in search, it has dominated the field. By creating a monopoly, Google was able to cement its position in the market, set its own prices, and generate massive profits. This financial strength has allowed Google to explore new technological frontiers without the constraints of competition. Thiel points out that Google makes so much money that it's now worth 3 times more than every US airline combined. The contrast between airlines and Google exemplifies the difference between competitive markets and monopolies. Airlines constantly compete with one another, leading to price wars and minimal profit margins. Thiel explains that under perfect competition, no company can sustain economic profit in the long run. In contrast, Google operates as a monopoly, enjoying significant profitability due to its unique position in the market. As Thiel puts it, airlines compete with each other, but Google stands alone. A prevailing myth in economic thought is that competition is what drives capitalism forward. Thiel challenges this notion by stating, Americans mythologize competition and credit it with saving us from socialist breadlines. Actually, capitalism and competition are opposites. And he argues that capitalism is fundamentally about accumulating capital, something that becomes nearly impossible in a highly competitive market where profits are consistently eroded. Rather than fostering economic success, excessive competition stifles growth and innovation. Instead, monopolies, when used creatively, pave the way for transformative advancements. However, creating something entirely new is no easy task. Thiel acknowledges this when he states, in a world of gigantic administrative bureaucracies, both public and private, searching for a new path might seem like hoping for a miracle. Large organizations, whether governmental or corporate, often lack the flexibility to innovate. Bureaucracies are inherently slow-moving and risk-averse, making it difficult to foster revolutionary ideas. Yet human beings have always been distinguished by their ability to create the seemingly impossible. This lays the groundwork for the notion that true innovation is most likely to come from startups rather than massive corporations. Chapter 1. Of 0 to 1 introduces several key themes that set the stage for the rest of the book. Thiel emphasizes the distinction between horizontal and vertical progress, highlighting the importance of 0 to 1 innovation over mere replication. He challenges the conventional wisdom surrounding competition, arguing that monopolies, when built through innovation, are far more valuable to society. As the book progresses, Thiel delves deeper into how entrepreneurs can achieve these ambitious goals, unlocking the secrets to creating the future rather than merely following existing trends. Chapter 2. The Fallacy of Competition and the Power of Secrets. This chapter challenges conventional wisdom about competition and introduces the idea that valuable truths, or secrets, exist and are crucial for creating successful businesses. The chapter argues that commonly accepted business practices are often based on mistaken reactions to past mistakes, and it emphasizes that thinking for oneself is the most contrarian thing one can do. The chapter starts with a question designed to surface contrarian ideas. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? This is presented as a difficult question, with the suggestion that it is often easier to start by thinking about what everyone agrees on. The author quotes Nietzsche, "Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule." The idea is that by identifying delusional popular beliefs, one can uncover the contrarian truths hidden behind them. The chapter highlights 4 common lessons that have become dogma in the startup world. 1. Make incremental changes. 2. Stay lean and flexible. 3. Improve on the competition. 4. Focus on product, not sales. The author argues that these lessons are based on mistaken reactions to the dot-com crash of 2000, and that the opposite principles are likely more correct. 1. It is better to risk boldness than triviality. 2. A bad plan is better than no plan. 3. Competitive markets destroy profits. 4. Sales matters just as much as product. The author states that the most contrarian thing of all is not to oppose the crowd, but to think for yourself. The author claims that the most valuable companies are built on valuable secrets that are unknown to others. These secrets can be about undiscovered aspects of the physical world, natural secrets, or things people don't know about themselves or hide from others, secrets about people. The ability to find and leverage these secrets is presented as a key to business success. If there were no secrets, that would mean that all of today's conventional ideas are enlightened and that everything has already been done. The author notes that contrarian thinking doesn't make any sense unless the world still has secrets left to give up. The author criticizes the idea of copying existing models and argues that this prevents one from learning the true lessons that can be gleaned from the success of others. The author argues that it's easier to copy a model than to create something new, but it's not the path to real progress. The author implies that merely imitating the successes of others will lead to a competitive market where profits are difficult to achieve. Consider an elementary proposition. Companies exist to make money, not to lose it. This should be obvious to any thinking person, but it wasn't so obvious to many in the late 1990s, when no loss was too big to be described as an investment in the future. This statement illustrates a delusional popular belief during the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. During that time, many companies were losing money at an alarming rate, but their losses were rationalized as a necessary investment for future growth. The author uses this as an example of how conventional wisdom can be misguided, as it defies the basic notion that companies need to be profitable. It is better to risk boldness than triviality. This principle is presented as the opposite of the widely accepted idea that small steps are the only safe path forward. The author advocates for taking bold risks in business because, in the long run, they are more likely to lead to big rewards. This goes against the conventional idea of incremental change and instead promotes radical innovation and original ideas. A bad plan is better than no plan. This statement contradicts the idea that companies should stay lean and flexible. The author states that it is more advantageous to have a plan that one can adapt than to have no plan at all. Planning, according to the author, is not arrogant or inflexible, but rather a necessary step in any business endeavor. Competitive markets destroy profits. This principle challenges the conventional idea that competition is good. The author argues that competitive markets drive down profits because companies are forced to compete on price. The author notes that focusing on competition will lead to a business struggling to survive, whereas a focus on creating a monopoly will allow a business to generate profits, as noted in the first chapter. Sales matters just as much as product. This statement rejects the notion that a product can sell itself. The author emphasizes that even the best product will fail without a solid sales and distribution plan. This argument is particularly salient for startups that may be overly focused on product development at the expense of sales, and this topic is examined in greater depth later in the book. The most contrarian thing of all is not to oppose the crowd, but to think for yourself. This quote encapsulates the core theme of the chapter. It argues that true contrarianism isn't about simply disagreeing with the majority. It's about independent thought. One should not reject dogma simply for the sake of rejecting dogma, but for the sake of true understanding. By thinking for oneself, the author argues, it is possible to find hidden truths and develop unique insights that can lead to successful businesses. If we already understand as much of the natural world as we ever will, if all of today's conventional ideas are already enlightened, and if everything has already been done, then there are no good answers. This quote highlights the importance of secrets and that without them, there is no room for contrarian thinking or innovation. If everything is known, then there is no room for new ideas and new companies, and there is no need for entrepreneurs. In summary, Chapter 2 sets the stage for the rest of the book by encouraging readers to question conventional wisdom, seek out hidden truths, and think for themselves. It suggests that the path to business success is not through following well-worn paths, but through forging new ones that are based on unique insights and contrarian perspectives. Chapter 3. Building a durable monopoly. This chapter argues that monopoly, not competition, is the condition of every successful business. It differentiates between perfect competition and monopoly, explaining that monopolies are good for both the business and society when they are dynamic and creative. The chapter also explores how companies misrepresent their market position and explains that the most important thing to understand about capitalism is that it is the opposite of competition. The chapter begins by outlining two simplified models economists use to describe markets: perfect competition and monopoly. In perfect competition, numerous firms sell identical products and no single firm has market power. This leads to a situation where profits are driven down to zero in the long run. Monopoly, on the other hand, exists when a single firm dominates its market and can set its own prices. The chapter emphasizes that a true monopoly isn't just about eliminating rivals or government favors, but is about being so good at what you do that no other firm can offer a close substitute. The chapter challenges the idea that competition is inherently good. It argues that capitalism is based on the accumulation of capital, but that under perfect competition, all profits get competed away. Therefore, if you want to create and capture lasting value, you should not build an undifferentiated commodity business. The author notes that Americans mythologize competition and credit it with saving us from socialist breadlines, but that capitalism and competition are opposites. The chapter argues that monopolies can be good for those within the company, as they have wider latitude to care about their workers, their products, and their impact on the wider world, since they don't have to worry about competition. In contrast, businesses in perfect competition are so focused on daily survival that they cannot plan for the long term. Only monopoly profits allow a business to transcend the daily, brute struggle for survival. The author acknowledges that monopolies have a bad reputation, but argues that in a dynamic world, this reputation is undeserved. In a static world, monopolies can raise prices without repercussions. However, the world we live in is dynamic, which means creative monopolies can add new categories of abundance to the world and give customers more choices. Monopolies are powerful engines for making things better. Monopolies tend to downplay their monopoly to avoid scrutiny. The author uses Google as an example, which does not claim to be a monopoly. However, the author notes that Google dominates the search market. The author shows how Google can frame itself as a small player when considering the broader advertising or technology markets. Even though it has a dominant position in search, businesses in competitive markets are incentivized to exaggerate their uniqueness and understate the scale of competition. They often narrowly define their market so that they appear dominant by definition. For example, a restaurant that serves British food might claim to own the entire market when the real market is the broader restaurant market in general. Creative industries also tend to downplay how much of their work is a rehash of existing ideas. The author illustrates this with the example of a screenwriter who claims that their movie will combine various exciting elements in entirely new ways. The chapter explains that non-monopolists exaggerate their distinction by defining their market as the intersection of various smaller markets, while monopolists disguise their monopoly by framing their market as the union of several large markets. The author uses Google's chairman Eric Schmidt's statement about facing an extremely competitive landscape as an example of this. The author contrasts the cutthroat nature of competitive environments like the restaurant industry, where even a small downgrade can be devastating, with a monopoly like Google that has wider latitude to care about its workers, products, and ethics. The chapter makes the argument that in a dynamic world, monopoly capitalism is good because the incentive to innovate results in products that benefit the public. The author claims that because companies locked in competition can't dream of making ambitious long-term plans, monopolies are the only kind of companies that can innovate. The author uses the US airline industry and Google as examples of perfect competition and monopoly, respectively. The airline industry creates hundreds of billions of dollars of value each year, yet it barely makes a profit due to intense competition. Google, on the other hand, creates less value but captures far more profit because it operates as a monopoly in search. This example highlights the difference between creating value and capturing value. The author notes that Google is worth 3 times more than every US airline combined due to its monopoly profits. The author notes that Google owns about 68% of the search market as of May 2014, and that the word Google is now in the Oxford English Dictionary as a verb. The author uses these as examples of how Google is a monopoly in search, even if it claims to be a small fish in a big pond. The author points out that Google only owns 3.4% of the global advertising market, or 0.24% of the consumer tech market, which are both much broader markets than the search market, and this allows Google to escape unwanted attention. The author describes a hypothetical scenario where an entrepreneur believes that their British food restaurant in Palo Alto will own the entire market because no one else is doing it. The author explains that the real market is the Palo Alto restaurant market in general, and that the restaurant will likely have a difficult time surviving. This example shows how non-monopolists exaggerate their distinction by narrowly defining their market. The chapter describes how a screenwriter is likely to pitch a new script by highlighting its unique combination of elements while avoiding the fact that it is a rehash of previous stories. The author notes that if a screenwriter pitches a movie with Jay-Z as a hacker fighting a shark, this has never been done before, but like the British restaurant in Palo Alto, that's probably a good thing. This example shows how non-monopolists exaggerate their uniqueness. The chapter references a statement from Google's chairman Eric Schmidt, who said that Google faces an extremely competitive landscape in order to demonstrate how monopolists disguise their position by defining their market broadly. The author claims that what Schmidt really means is that Google is a small fish in a big pond, even though Google is a monopoly in search, which the author claims is a lie. The author uses the example of Bernard Loiseau, a chef who committed suicide after losing a Michelin star, to illustrate the ruthlessness of a competitive ecosystem and how it pushes people to extreme measures. This example is contrasted with Google, which has wider latitude to care about its workers, products, and the world, since it doesn't need to worry about competing with anyone. In summary, Chapter 3 makes a compelling argument for the value of monopolies in a dynamic world. It challenges the conventional wisdom that competition is always good and demonstrates that by building a unique and differentiated business, companies can generate significant profits and create lasting value for society. The chapter emphasizes that true monopolies are not about eliminating competition, but about being so good at what you do that no one else can offer a close substitute, and that these monopolies are necessary for innovation and progress. Chapter 4. The Ideology of Competition. This chapter challenges the conventional view that competition is inherently good, arguing that it is actually destructive and should be avoided. It argues that businesses should strive for a monopoly to ensure long-term success, and that the most successful companies have transcended the competitive mindset. The chapter contrasts competition with war, noting that competition is a destructive force, while business should not be. The chapter concludes that escaping competition is key to building a successful business. The chapter asserts that competition is a destructive force, not a source of value, and that businesses should avoid it. The author notes that war metaphors invade our everyday business language, but that in reality it is competition, not business, that is like war. The chapter also uses the example of Hamlet, who believed that greatness meant being willing to fight for reasons as thin as an eggshell, to illustrate how pride and honor can get in the way of sound business decisions. The author notes that the twisted logic that makes people fight for things that don't matter is part of human nature, but disastrous in business. The chapter posits that the ultimate goal of any business should be to achieve a monopoly, which the author defines as a situation where a company is so good at what it does that no other firm can offer a close substitute. In this view, companies should not be focused on competing with each other, but on being unique and dominating their markets. The author claims that escaping competition will give you a monopoly, but that even a monopoly is only a great business if it can endure in the future. The author notes that professors downplay the cutthroat culture of academia, but managers never tire of comparing business to war. The author argues that despite this popular metaphor, competition is like war, not business. The author explains that in war, you should either not throw any punches or strike hard and end it quickly. According to the author, competitive markets destroy profits. The chapter suggests that companies should seek out areas where they can be the only player, rather than entering into cutthroat markets where they will be constantly battling for survival. The author claims that businesses should seek to create a monopoly to guarantee survival, as well as the resources to provide higher quality goods, a better work environment, and an ethical framework for the business. The author states that if you can recognize competition as a destructive force instead of a sign of value, you're already more sane than most. The author notes that a clear head is necessary to build a monopoly. The author notes that escaping competition will give you a monopoly, but even a monopoly is only a great business if it can endure in the future. The author contrasts the New York Times and Twitter to make this point. The author explains that while each of these companies employs a few thousand people and gives millions of people a way to get news, Twitter was valued at 12 times more than the New York Times when it went public in 2013, despite the fact that the New York Times made a profit while Twitter lost money. The chapter uses the example of the New York Times and Twitter to show that companies with the ability to maintain cash flows far into the future are more valuable. The author explains that most of the value of low-growth businesses is in the near term, and that firms with close substitutes will see profits competed away. The author argues that the value of a company depends more on its ability to generate cash flows in the future than any other qualitative characteristic. As discussed in the previous chapter, the author uses the example of the US airline industry to illustrate a competitive market where profits are minimal, while Google is an example of a company that has achieved a monopoly. In this chapter, the author uses the example to emphasize how the airline industry is constantly at war with itself. The author uses the example of the New York Times company and Twitter to show that companies with large cash flows far into the future are more valuable. The author notes that Twitter was valued much higher than the New York Times at the time they went public, despite not earning a profit, while the Times was profitable. The author argues that investors value the future potential of Twitter more highly than the present value of the New York Times, which has a less clear path toward future growth and profitability. The author claims that the difference between the two lies in the fact that the New York Times has substitutes and will see profits competed away, while Twitter's growth has no inherent reason to stop. The author references the character of Hamlet to show how pride and honor can lead to destructive competitive behavior. The author quotes Hamlet, who says that, rightly, to be great is not to stir without great argument, but greatly to find quarrel in a straw, when honour's at the stake. The author notes that for Hamlet, greatness means a willingness to fight for reasons as thin as an eggshell. The author contrasts this twisted logic with sound business practice, saying that if you can recognize competition as a destructive force instead of a sign of value, you're already more sane than most. The author uses the example of nightclubs and restaurants as extreme examples of businesses that compete and thus can quickly see their profits competed away. The author argues that because successful nightclubs and restaurants have many substitutes, their profits will be competed away. In summary, Chapter 4 argues that businesses should avoid competition and strive for a monopoly in order to ensure long-term success and profitability. The chapter emphasizes that competition is destructive and that business is not a zero-sum game where one person's gain is another's loss. Instead, businesses should seek to create unique value that cannot be easily replicated. The chapter concludes by stating that escaping competition is the key to building a successful business. To wrap up, 0 to 1 presents a revolutionary perspective on building successful businesses, urging us to challenge the conventional wisdom that competition is the key to success. Peter Thiel emphasizes the power of creating monopolies through innovation and uniqueness, encouraging entrepreneurs to focus on long-term value and differentiation instead of battling in crowded markets. His insights into how businesses can thrive without being trapped in the cycle of competition offer a fresh roadmap for anyone seeking to make a lasting impact in the world. If you found these insights valuable, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions, and let's continue the journey to building better businesses together. Thank you for watching.